So, you think a museum is a terrible place for a date, huh? Well, I disagree. Hi everybody, my name is Gianna and I'm a museum professional, meaning I work in museums. And I love museums, which is why I call myself the museum lover. And today, we're going to be talking about an article that I read entitled, "Museums Are a Terrible Place for a Date." Everything in an art museum could be arguably inspired by love and romance and tenderness. And maybe some kinky stuff. This was posted on GQ around January 2020, and when I read it, I was a little bit surprised to think that somebody was so appalled by a museum, because I think a museum is a really fun place for a date. So, we're gonna read through this, and you're gonna hear from someone who is a museum professional what a museum date is really all about. So let's get to reading. Strictly enforced quiet bright lighting and scarce opportunities for eye contact? No thanks. Alright, friend. Let's see what you have to say. There are many reasons people who are considering boning should not elect to spend their time before said boning in a spacious, brightly lit room, but the main one is timing. Have you ever worked at a museum? Because believe me, museums are not the enemy of said boning. If I had a penny for the amount of times I had to interrupt people full-on PDA, tongue-kissing on sofas and benches within the exhibits, I'd have a lot of pennies. I'd probably have $1 worth of pennies. Second of all, you can bone anywhere. Gas stations, I've seen people bone. Libraries, I've seen people bone. Anywhere where you think people cannot bone. Hotel ghouls, I've seen it. I have been traumatized on multiple occasions. No two people alive move through the museums at the same rate. This is true. Very true. In fact, about maybe average people spend about 10 seconds looking at any kind of description and then they're off. You spend more than 10 seconds, I love you. I respect you. Thank you. Personally, unless I have purchased a guided audio tour that's giving me the juicy gossip on every artist, like which relatives they slept with, and which pope they sent into apoplexy, nice, I'm the kind of person who needs Heelys to get through a museum fast enough. First of all, it sounds like you want one thing and one thing only. But then again, this is GQ. So, I mean, hey, you do you. Meanwhile, my boyfriend makes a whole production of it. He can look at one singular painting for longer than it takes me to do a whole lap around the room. I like your boyfriend. I'll hang out with your boyfriend. He appreciates art. Everyone has different museum speeds. Who is supposed to adjust, and how much? Is the brisk museum enjoyer supposed to linger with the slow pursuer, growing bored out of their mind, feigning interest? Or does the lackadaisical browser need to toot hurry up? There's no correct etiquette, just awkwardness. It's called communication, right? I will most gladly say, hey man, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? What are you interested in? What are you reading there? It sparks communication, it sparks a conversation. That's what museums are for. The idea, of course, that art will provoke stimulating conversation, great in theory, but unlikely in practice. No, people at an art museum will talk about anything. They will talk about the signs out front of the bathrooms, right? As demonstrated by your woke aunt who took one philosophy class. The sign reads women, but I identify as a human. Which restroom should I be using? I kid you not, some people will talk literally about anything in a museum. It doesn't have to be an art museum specifically, which I believe you, Miss Author, are thinking of. Why not take yourself to a science museum, history museum? It doesn't have to be an art museum, you know. There are lots of different kinds of museums out there. Let's see. Either you're the kind of person who gazes at a painting, speed reads the plaque, and decides how much you like it, or you stalk around the place with your arms joined behind your back like a serious art person while you form deep emotional connections with the artwork. That's what I'd hope you'd do. When two people enter a museum, one might exit feeling somewhat relaxed. Museums are pretty soothing. But otherwise unaffected, while the other is reeling and trying not to think about the painting that reminded them of their estranged relationship with their father. Now what? You two are emotionally out of sync and you've just walked 2 miles. This is true. wear good walking shoes at a museum. You will walk a lot. And you have to find a place to sit down pretty soon. There are benches in a museum. Believe me, there are. They're everywhere. You can sit on couches and benches that are available to you. How about that? Well, the problem isn't that museums, well, the art within them, inspire discordant emotional responses. They're supposed to! That is what art does, especially contemporary art. You want to see the weird stuff? The weird stuff is supposed to make you emotional. That's why we go to museums. We want to be inspired. We want to be awed. We want to question the world around us. That's why we love art. Secondly, again, you should say art museum isn't a good place for a date. Because you're only talking about art museums here. Just saying. Museums don't offer a particularly conducive environment to actually talk about these feelings. They're meant for quiet reflection. They are intimidating security guards stationed at every corner, ready to yell at you the moment your face gets too close for a piece. Listen, if you want to pay the $500,000 it takes to get a nose print out of a priceless piece of Renaissance artwork, I mean, get as close as you want to. I'm sure you have the money to spare. And you can too talk at a museum. You just don't want to be on your phone talking about your stupid business partner in the middle of a gallery. Listen to me, bro. You gotta talk to Reggie. Right now, okay? We were supposed to have the shipment out yesterday. Ugh! I will also reiterate that these mismatches are especially difficult to reconcile early on. Expressing heavy emotions to someone and getting nothing in return can quickly snuff out a romantic spark. You're not wrong. You are not wrong at all. I would not take a person to a museum on a first date. That's just me. Because museums really do help me show off my intelligence, because I love museums. I love science museums, I love art museums, I love history museums, and I love talking about everything in there. And if you can't match my enthusiasm, if you can't really appreciate my intellect, a surefire sign that you and I aren't gonna work out very well. Nothing bothers me more than taking someone to a museum and then having them give me one-word answers. It drives me nuts. Hey, so what do you think of this piece? I really enjoy the use of color. It's alright. Trust me, you'll want to save the museum for maybe a third date. That's always a good one. I will absolutely concede that the museum date sounds romantic. I do not think anyone is a fool for being seduced by the idea of a joint edifying pursuit of ogling masterpieces with a person you'd like to ogle naked. But let's be honest, people. Ogling and naked in an art museum go together quite well. You can't have an experience at an art museum without seeing a little bit of the skin under the clothes. So, author, you have made your argument, and I think you've made your argument quite well. But it sounds like you really want to get something different out of your relationship than I would as a museum professional, as a museum goer myself. The truth is, I would use a museum date really to judge if my date can keep up with me. So what do you all think? Would you take someone on a date to a museum? I, for one, would maybe save it for later down the line, but I think museums in general tend to be a really great place for a date. There's food, there's lots of different museums you can go to. You could do history, you could do science, you could do art if you're into art. Anybody can visit a museum. You don't have to have a degree in art history. You don't have to be a science major. You don't have to do anything. Screen turn on, yay! Hey, what else would you like to see me talk about? I love talking about museums, and I love encouraging people my age to check out museums as well. We need more young people in the museums. Too many crotchety old ladies. So what do you think, everybody? Do museums inspire romance? I certainly think they do. There are so many different types of museums out there, so many dates to be had. Where would you take someone on a date? Maybe that isn't a museum. They get it. Take care, everybody. I will see you in my next video. Bye!